In Islam, what I've learned is they say they come with the message that God gave to the Jews and then the Christians, and it's monotheistic. But if you go back, and I'm on about way back, and you look at scholars, historians, people actually of note who know what they're talking about, it was not monotheistic. Judaism was not monotheistic. I learned this and I was quite surprised, yeah? And then, before the Babylonian exile, they were never monotheists. This is why, when you read the Bible, it says us, gods, we, plural, plural, plural. And there's many passages throughout the whole Bible. It says the divine council. And mate, it mentions many gods. So I started to read the Bible. I thought, man, it's there in black and white. You cannot get away from it. There are many, many, many gods mentioned throughout the Bible who the Jews worshipped. They actually got in trouble by other Jews. The priests were sacrificed, the temples were burned, all by the other Jews because of they were worshipping other gods. King David, King Solomon, even Solomon himself, who in the Bible, if you read it, was meant to have the most wisdom amongst all the Jews. He was meant to be the most cleverest man. But in the end of his life, he built holes to other gods, he worshipped other gods. But then, I don't know how that got, so after the Babylonian exile, you come down the line, and then all of a sudden it became one God, Yahweh, and then that led on to the Christians, and then eventually the Muslims. But what I'm trying to say is, the whole foundation of Islam, especially after you read the Quran, it is built on the Jewish mythology. It's built on the stories of Moses, Abraham, and all these, I call them myths. You might think they're historic, it's up to yourself. But they're built on a foundation that crumbles when you look into it deeply, and then you go into academia, look at what historians say, look at what like archaeologists says. They were never monotheists to begin with. Do you understand? So what the Muslims say is not true, and in the whole house of cards falls.
So there's a few things you've mentioned in this regard. I think it's an interesting argument, and thanks for bringing it up. So when you look at the Islamic statement of monotheism, it's referring to the 124,000 prophets that have come. So we don't rely solely upon the Jewish narrative, or our time hasn't started from the Jewish time. It actually has started from the time of Adam. So we believe 124,000 prophets have come, including Moses, Jesus, Enoch, David, and the likes. So what we say is that in between those times, there have definitely been instances, as you've mentioned, where monotheism has changed to paganism. In fact, it's mentioned in the Quran that they were worshipping the golden calf, and that was a period in which polytheism was taking place. So definitely there are periods where that has happened, but that's the whole point, that a prophet would be sent to then redirect the people towards monotheism. And that's why we can't 100% affirm what's in the Old and New Testament today, because whether it's Jews, whether it's Christians, whether it's Muslims, historians, academics, they all believe that those scriptures have been changed, and there's so many different versions and variants of them. That's something pretty much accepted. So what we say is that if you were to have access to the original Torah and the original Injil, you will see that it talks unambiguously about monotheism. And there are echoes of that within the New Testament and the Old Testament as well. But of course, I would agree with you that there were definitely periods in history when polytheism did creep in. But then we say that with the coming of the next prophet, it was phased out. But of course, that means that there were deviant sects of Judaism, of Christianity, like you had the Gnostics of Christianity as well, that did believe in, idol worship. And some would even argue that the Catholics of today when this concept of icons that they have, where they say that that icon, once it's been consecrated, it has a window to Mary, like an icon of Mary has a window to Mary. I mean, Protestants would say that's idol worship. Icon, the word icon is akin to an idol. So yeah, I don't think what you've said is controversial, but I think there's a bit of nuance in there. Yeah.
Yes, but you're running off of your own theology. What the Muslims said 600 AD, 500, what the Muslims said at the time of Muhammad. But I'm going back at the time of the Jews. So at that time, you had we've got the Dead Sea Scrolls. They're 1,000 years that they're old.
You know, in the Dead Sea Scrolls in Genesis, when it talks about God walking in the Garden of Eden to Adam and Eve, he was one, isn't it?
Yeah, but if you get the Bible today and you read it, and I read it, and it jumps out. It's not monotheistic. It's not.
But in Genesis, when God is walking in the Garden of Eden, he's one.
But he uses the word literally. Oh, by the way, the God walking in the Garden of Eden, that can't be God. He don't know where they are. He don't know what they've done. That doesn't explain Allah at all.
Well, we definitely would agree, but I mean, I'm giving the Old Testament
narrative.
About
a human walking through a garden. That doesn't make sense at all.
I would agree with you.
But this is what I'm saying.
But the Old Testament claims that that's one instance. Even in, I think it's in Isaiah as well, they say God is sitting on his throne. God meaning one, right?
Yeah, okay. So, like I'm going back to the archaeology. The early Israelites and the Canaanites, they were not monotheistic. They didn't believe in one God. And this is one thing that Muslims repeatedly say. We've come to rectify, because it's the Trinity really and the three, where they say, no, look, there's not three, there's one. But if you go back further...
Do you believe in the Trinity?
Of course not. If you go back further, and read the Bible. My friend, if you pick up the Bible and read it, it's pointless even mentioning it, because if you're not going to take anything from it serious, literally anything, you say, oh, we believe in some of it, we believe some of it's been distorted, blah. You might as well throw the whole fucking book out.
Doesn't it make it clear that your God is only one God, there's no God but he, it's referring to one God,
no,
right?
I'm going to push back on that, I'm going to say no.
Tell me.
Right, so I understand the Trinity is a hard thing to, like someone trying to explain that to you, mate, I don't know.
Yeah.
It don't make sense, it never will. But then nor does one God. Because who created God? Why did God create anything? If you're just one person, exists in our time, space, how does that even make sense? If one God, what, he just existed as nothing and then he became something? There can't be a nothing before. Do you understand? Like,
is God created or uncreated, according to us?
According to the Muslims, he's uncreated.
So by definition, something that's uncreated doesn't have a beginning.
So then you can't uncreate something. And eventually, at some point in time, there must have been something where he thought, you know what, I'm going to make a planet and fill it full of people, and the rest of the universe. It does that. Personally, that's just as confusing to me as the Trinity.
You know, philosophically, if you believe that all of us are dependent, that means we're dependent on something, that's dependent on something, and if that chain goes on, there's two options. Either it goes on forever, or there's an end to that chain. Philosophers, in Western philosophy in particular, they have no issue believing and accepting that there has to be an end to that chain. That end to that chain is a singular, it's one, and it's necessary. What do you think about that?
I honestly think from the bottom of my heart, you're trying to figure out God, you think you understand God. It's like me trying to get that pigeon to change an engine on that truck. Or get that pigeon to try and invent a bike. The small mind of a human is never going to understand.
But could you get a pigeon to switch on and off a contraption?
Maybe if you trained it a bit, but that's a lot different than what we're talking about.
So God has trained us. Justin Barrett, he's done a study. Oxford, he says that we have an innate disposition to believe in God.
Like you have any understanding whatsoever when you have literally zero, along with no evidence whatsoever. You show me a gram of evidence, a gram of what you say, and it was true. brother, I'd be your best friend and follow you for life.
Okay,
But
let's do this
today
then.
You can, all you
I'll
can
take
give
that
me
challenge.
is your theology.
No.
And I've looked at it. And
No. I'll
I've
give you
tried to
back.
figure it out.
I'll give you some arguments that you will like.
It's just going to take long
No.
because I don't want to be on camera too long.
No. So I'll give you, if you want a short one, I'll give you a very short one. Anything that begins to exist has a cause. Make sense to you?
Including God.
Anything that begins to include anything
So
that
God
begins to
exists,
exist.
Yeah.
Anything that begins to exist has a cause. Yes?
Okay.
The universe began to exist, correct?
Yes.
Therefore, the universe has a cause.
But what about God?
First, stick with this syllogism.
Okay, yeah, okay, I
We're
get
talking
that.
about the
Yeah,
universe.
yeah.
Do you believe the universe has a cause?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so would that cause come from within the universe or outside the universe?
There's something my mind cannot comprehend because the universe is so big.
It can
We
be.
haven't reached the end of it. We know nothing about it. We say it's this big, but yet we can't even get a rocket to the moon.
But just because we can't get to the end of it doesn't mean that
So
we don't know what's within it.
You're trying to describe the universe to me, brother, when the top scientists in the world know nothing about it.
Not describe, explain.
Yeah,
And there
yeah.
are certain things that can
Yeah,
be
yeah.
explained without describing them.
Yeah.
Yeah, to some regards, because there's certain knowledge that we have that is outside of observation. For example, if I tell you a married bachelor, is there such thing as a married bachelor?
Yes, I've been one for 20 years.
A married bachelor, not a single bachelor.
Okay, for the camera's sake, yeah.
Okay, so a married bachelor, it's a contradiction, right? A bachelor by definition means you're unmarried,
Of course.
and a married person means someone who's married. So you can't have a contradiction. Now, if you say, no, I have to see that, I have to see a married bachelor
Yeah.
to say that it doesn't exist. No, because you can infer this. Yeah, you can use your logical faculties and reasoning to tell me it doesn't exist. Like this is both a finger and an elephant. You can say it clearly isn't because it's a contradiction. There's no way that that could be an elephant. So if I tell you the first premise, anything that begins to exist has a cause. Well, you're like, according to what I know, it makes sense.
It's very arrogant because you're using reasoning from the limited capability of a human mind. We are not gods. You're using the capability of a human mind that is not much different from a dolphin.
Okay. I
said
kind
to
of
you,
get what you're saying.
Yeah, you understand.
So when we hadn't left the confines of Earth,
Yeah.
there were people who said the same thing as you.
Yeah.
That we are very arrogant to think and dream what lies outside of our planet. Now, if people called anybody arrogant, then we wouldn't have left the atmosphere and we wouldn't have realized that, we can actually go to the moon. Then we ventured further and we said, you know what, we could even go to Mars. And that's why there's, I think a contraption has been sent to Mars, and now we want to, a rover,
Sure,
yeah.
broke down within a few weeks.
Yeah,
But it got there.
Yeah, it got there in the end. So similarly, again, we have this concept of a wormhole. We can actually go further on in the universe if we are to understand and discover more wormholes that can help us traverse great distances. So the point that I'm trying to say is that just because we're small, just because we're limited, doesn't mean that we cannot answer the unanswered questions. For example, an atom. It comes from the Greek word indivisible, which means you can't divide it. I'm sure you understand now with the Oppenheimer and the atom bomb, it was indeed separated to the great detriment of humanity. That's why we got the atom bomb. So the atom can be separated. So I can argue and posit to you that logically and rationally, we can derive whether it is that we have created ourselves, we have come from nothing, or there is an entity that created us.
I fully agree. Now listen,
So I don't think it's arrogant. I think it's logical.
I do think it's arrogant. I do believe we can be part of the creation. We are part of the creation, but I think it's extremely arrogant that you and only you only, and I mean Muslims when I say that, understand the only truth.
But you agreed with my argument, though.
Yeah, but especially when it's built off the back of ancient mythologies.
It's the argument that I gave you is based on logical
right, but it's a different
and
thing
philosophical
to say.
reasoning.
It's a completely different thing to say, okay, we are created, but I will never understand it. Just saying we are created and I completely understand it. I've got to pray 5 times a day. I have to do this and that and the other. And to me, it's comically laughable, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. But anyway, listen.
Just one thing before you go, because you made a point that was quite interesting. The reason why it's comical and laughable to you is because you haven't, with respect, understood the arguments. Like, if you're talking about us praying 5 times a day and that comes from the Quran, your question should have been, can you prove to me that the Quran comes from God? And now the onus is on me to prove if it indeed comes from God. And in order to do that, I will need to know your criteria and you will need to know my criteria.
Slowly, 114 surahs, and in a very respectful way. It is not a very clever, sensible book to read and listen to. It repeats itself over and over. It gives nothing what goes on in the world today. 1400 years ago, it might have been relevant.
So if a person, as a father...
And as a Muslim, there's not much I see in that reflects on Muslims today. So then I've read this, I say, well, hold on. It doesn't say you split the moon there at all. Where does that come from? Hadith. Now you have to go for a whole nother body of literature to understand this body of literature. So you fall back to the Quran, that don't really give you nothing. How come the moon was split? So, do you understand? Anyway,
it makes it clear that the moon was split. What's your issue? If you believe that there's an all-powerful God who split the moon, what's the? I don't understand what the argument is.
The argument is.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Quran came from God.
Yes.
That's what you said. I've read it.
In English.
In an English, yeah. I was going to say that in an English translation.
Yeah.
Not very impressed.
You said because it repeats itself, but just because as a parent or a teacher that you repeat yourself, it doesn't mean that what you're saying is false. It just means that you are repeating certain things because you want to bring attention to those things.
No. You sit down and read the Old Testament slowly and try and understand it. Then read the Quran and you're like, well, hold up. I've just read all this. Bar a couple of small differences.
Major differences. In the Quran, it doesn't say God became tired. It didn't say Abraham lied to his son before he sacrificed him. It didn't say Moses took his hand out of his armpit and it was leprous. It doesn't mention any of these things. It doesn't mention God becomes tired on the 7th day. The Quran is very specific when it mentions these stories. It doesn't say David was an adulterer. It doesn't say Lot had sex with his own daughters. It mentions none of this.
But it also says Moses parted the Red Sea. It says Jonah was in the belly was in the belly of a whale and alive. For 3 days, he was spat up on the shore and a leaf bent over. It says incredibly stupid things, just like every other book. I understand that you ignore them, just like the Christians ignore their things.
Not necessarily, because if you believe something is from God and you believe that someone's drowned, why is it difficult for you to understand that a whale has consumed an individual and then taken him out?
All you've got is belief, and that's it, my brother. And this is why I struggle.
What's the proof that the sun will rise tomorrow?
I'm pretty confident it will.
Confident, belief.
Yeah.
So you have belief. Yeah. What's the evidence that you'll reach home today and watch Dexter Resurrection?
It's no different than anybody that believes in anything. Belief is belief.
Exactly.
It's not evidence. It's not factual. But listen, I've got to go.
Take it easy. If you're here next time, maybe we can...
I hate big crowds and I hate a lot of cameras.
No problem. Maybe we can speak on the side next time, yeah? Take it easy.
That's what I asked for the first time.
No problem. Take it easy. I mean, what can be said in that regard? The brother had a few questions. I think he was intimidated by the crowd. Inshallah, next time we can answer more of his questions. But one of the things that people say sometimes is that the Quran and the Old and New Testament is the same. And like the examples that I was giving, it's not the same. Yeah. Yes, there are echoes of the subject matter, but the details within the Quran are completely different, like the ones that I mentioned. And further on, the Quran makes it clear that Pharaoh's body will be preserved, whilst the Bible makes it clear that everything was destroyed. On top of that, an example that we do mention is that at the time of Joseph, the Bible says that there were pharaohs. The Quran makes it clear at the time of Joseph, there were kings, not pharaohs. So with all due respect, we don't talk about Lot having intercourse with his daughters. Doesn't mention that in the Quran. Yeah. We say Lot was a truthful, valuable, pious individual. They say David committed adultery with a woman. We don't believe this. They say in the Bible that Solomon erected an idol for his wives. He had 7,000 wives and 300 concubines. We don't believe this. Yeah, so when they say these sorts of things, I'm sorry, with respect, we will call you out on it, because the Quran is not the Bible. Yes, it will echo similar sentiments, but it is more precise, accurate, and more relevant to the society that we are living in today. And the more you look at the Quran and you study it, the more you will fall in love with the Quran, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.